And if this all goes according to plan, if I go to YouTube, you're going to laugh at my channel, by the way. I have a daughter who's 10 and a son who's nearly 3. And so occasionally I'll be signed in when it says structural equation model. I'll be signed in whenever I'm talking to myself. Anyway, there, yes. I'm live recording it. Now this is sort of meta. So you don't have to be here necessarily, although I hope there's some value to being here. And if you see my channel, if you see what I have on here, thankfully you didn't see much, but there's an odd mix of, my son likes rockets. I showed him the space shuttle, and he's like, yeah, I want to see that more. So lots of space shuttle, and then my daughter likes like makeup videos and stuff. So YouTube doesn't know what to do with me. And then there's all the old dad stuff that's on, like I have a Beavis and Butthead video and so forth. So. And look, we're just going off into infinity. So it says structural equation modeling now. I'll get that fixed for the next time. Long story short, everything I try to do in class will have recordings of, so you can go back to. And that's part of the reason why I want to do the flip class, is because when there's a lecture online, yes, I'm just rambling through my stream of consciousness on the lecture, but if you miss something, you can pause it and go back and try to see it as well. Because a lot of this stuff doesn't get in the first time or the second time, or for me, it's like the 10th or 30th time, whatever. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of focus and effort, and I'm trying to make it so that you can continually go back to what you do. So that's my plan for the class. I'm going to introduce our teaching assistant. Thankfully, we have some help. Right here.
Hi everyone, my name is Jihong. I'm a PhD student in educational psychology. I have learned R for almost 2 years, but I still have a lot of things don't know. So no question is too basic and embarrassing. If you have any question about R, just let me know.
Thank you, Jihong. Jihong will be having office hours, and I'll be talking about that in just a moment. And we'll both have some office hours. But the bigger picture is that Jihong is going to help with basically with our support throughout the class. He's not going to be grading, creating homeworks or anything like that. He's going to be working on R. And the way I look at this as a professor is that this is a learning experience for him too. Even if you've been a teaching assistant for 15 times, or like me, been a professor for a number of years, every class is a learning experience, right? So this is a way, and so what I'd like, if you know, I try to mention to him, it's okay to say I don't know. And the same thing, bless you, same thing with each of you. It's okay to say I don't know. So it's okay to not know. Just I'm happy to help answer questions. I may have to say I don't know also. So that's just how it works. I don't have all the answers all the time, and the same thing goes with Jihong. But so the plan is that Jihong will be here. He'll have office hours you're planning on was Fridays from 9 to 11 a.m. up on the 6th floor. You're in the open area, I believe. Your GTA office, did you see where that was? 617. Okay, so that's in the north side of the 6th floor. So make a right turn off of the elevator. One of the open areas there. My office is, actually no, you're in 617. You're across from my office. Hey, never mind. We're both in the same ballpark. We're in the same neighborhood. And so it turns out our office hours will overlap. I'm 10 to 12 Fridays. Although I will note, I've got an interesting, to say the least, travel schedule. And so I'll put on my main website when there's no office hours for me as well. So you'll be able to see that there. My website, jonathantemplin.com. So it's fairly easy to find. So I will not have office hours this Friday. In fact, I'm heading out to work in Utah for the next couple days. But we will have more regular office hours as we go along. So that's Jihong. Heard a little bit about me. My office, 614, upstairs as well. You've all made it to here. We'll just go through a little bit of the syllabus here. I did not print syllabi because, again, I try to do everything online. But did you all receive an email? Those of you who are enrolled, did you receive my email about preparatory information? Those of you who haven't received that, the main thing in the email was everything's online. So go to jonathantemplin.com and you can scroll down and find a link to our class page. And if you're planning on auditing during our week, we did in class. I like to have 2 breaks, about an hour apart. So we'll have our first break either at 1:20 or 1:30, just to try to get up and not think about this a little too much. 3 hours is overwhelming, at least for me. So at that break, if you're not yet into Blackboard or not yet into, for whatever reason, just let me know, come up, and I'll try to get you added to it. So so here again is our syllabus. Kind of goes over what we do. The big picture about this class is that, again, this class is a lot experimental in a lot of ways. It's the continuation of an experiment I started in like 2011. So a little bit more backstory. I sound like a dad now, don't I? Back in my day, seriously. My first class I taught at KU over in Fraser Hall was Multivariate Statistics. And I did like any new assistant, well, not any, but my impression of an assistant professor is you teach it the way you taught it, you learned it in grad school, right? And I had taken multivariate early on in grad school. I'd done a comprehensive, or what we call a qualifying exam on it, so I read pretty much every multivariate textbook from the 1960s and 70s and 80s. And I was prepared, right? And I made this class. In fact, you can even go online and see all my notes for it. I'm going to actually go to it real quick because I want to show you the difference. Here, multivariate statistics. Try to put all my stuff online so you can see how terrible I used to be. And no, I'm just kidding. But there's all sorts of stuff like matrix algebra, matrices, multivariate normal, mean vectors, MANOVA, profiling, all this other stuff. And yeah, that's how I learned it. That's how we teach it. And it seemed like the class went well, so I felt pretty supported. And then 6 years, I didn't teach the class for 6 years. I taught it at University of Michigan. Has a summer program called, it's the Intra-University Consortium on ICPSR, Political and Social Science Research. ICPSR, did I get that right? ICPSR, you can go up to Michigan, you can take an 8-week summer program, and all you do is take stats classes all day long, and I was an instructor for multivariate there, and so I thought, okay, great, I prepped this before, I've got all this in the bank. I started using it, and I realized nothing that I talked about in that class had I ever used or ever helped someone use in my stat practice, in my research, in their research, in the whole time of those 6 years. So naturally began the question of, why on earth would I continue to teach stuff that people do not use for multivariate? All right? And you look at it, a lot of the multivariate classes do the same type of thing. They're either this matrix algebra-centric way of doing things, or one of the books out there is Tabachnik and Fidel, and they add in like logistic regression and discriminant analysis and so forth. And so I went about trying to retool the course. I had helped and my closest colleague, and happened to be married to her, Lisa Hoffman, is in the field as well. She's a professor. Actually, she's in the child language doctoral program, but she and I knew each other for a number of years, and then I moved to Nebraska I gave up tenure to go to Nebraska to work with her and whatnot. Don't ever give up tenure. But, it's good now, but don't do that. Learning from mistakes. But in the process, we worked on this class, and so we taught this class to a lecture hall like this of 50 students the first time, but we team taught it. And it was a great experience for a number of reasons. But we tried to build it with the idea that multivariate statistics, what multivariate is varies widely by person to person. But what we want this to be is the course that you take that gets you ready to go into the other courses, or if this is your last course in statistics, and that's cool too, that when you encounter statistics as you go on in your life, that you're going to be a little bit more prepared for what shows up now. Because most of the problem with the multivariate techniques that we saw before is they've fallen out of the wayside, the stuff in this class, they've fallen out of the use because they've been incorporated into better, more modern statistical methods. Statistics, just like every field that you're in, statistics evolves, as Lisa likes to say, we have our own journals and everything. It's an evolving, rapidly moving pace field, and now it's even gotten more crazy because of this merging of kind of engineering and computer science with statistics and machine learning and artificial intelligence and so forth. So what I'm gearing with this course to be is 2 parts. The first part is like a deep dive into linear models, which still are the primary mechanisms that we use in statistics, but in a very kind of multivariate fashion. and the second part to be sort of a survey of what's getting used. And so to that point, going back to my syllabus here, here is the intended structure of the course. Again, introduction to R. We're going to actually talk about R today, so you can go and download the R files. If you haven't downloaded R yet, please do so, but I'll talk about that in just a moment. We get into general linear models. The prerequisite for this class was some type of regression or regression and ANOVA course. So I'm not assuming you've all had deep understanding of either of these, but I want to give a little bit to start off with. So with the first couple weeks are linear models, and then interactions in linear models. So these are things that would be in regression and ANOVA. And it's sort of a much more intense version of them. So trying to kind of start giving you the kind of the modern perspective of how these models work. Then we're going to start changing things up. We're going to allow you to have different types of data. Like, what if your data aren't continuous? If you've got count data, or you've got censored data where it's continuous within a range, but it ends at a high end or a low end. For instance, maybe you ask people, you know, have you seen, if you've ever watched political debates on TV these days, they have these little thermometers about how people are feeling, and you can see that. Because some people are always at the top, you know, and some people, how do you model data like that? How do you understand what's going on? What are the phenomena that go with that? Not everything fits into a regression or an ANOVA, so that's where that next step comes into. And then we get into a little bit of the technical part of it. It's not technical in that I want you to derive things and do math. It's more, why are we doing this? Why do we use maximum likelihood is really what I'm after. Because that's sort of the dominant paradigm in statistics these days. It's not always going to be dominant, I don't think. So I've changed it up later on. But it really is kind of the anchor point for what we do. Why is it so important? What does it give us about statistics? Why does everybody end up using it? So that's where we're going. We have to do a little bit of matrix algebra, but that's mainly because a lot of the stuff in statistics is written in those terms. So I'm going to teach you like addition with matrices and subtraction and multiplication. Like not under the hood, super under the hood stuff, but stuff you can do in R within a line of code, try to do things. But mainly the purpose of that is to try to have a fighting chance at deciphering what's going on. When you see the next person come out with the method and say, hey, you really need to do this, and you take a look at what's happening, you're like, you know, I had a few matrices. Let me try and see what's going on here. So a lot of statistics is this pattern recognition. But then we get into the multivariate part where we have multivariate versions of linear models. Something called path analysis, where we have dependent variables that can predict other dependent variables. So we have mixed effects models and repeated measures. Many of you do repeated measures types of studies, and there's repeated measures ANOVA, which you may or may not have learned before, but there's modern versions of it to use as well, a little bit more accurate. But then that's sort of it. This first part of the class right here, that's linear models, mostly. Linear models, linear models, linear models. It's all stuff that we go over. And once we get to April, we start talking about Bayesian. That's the next big thing coming. I don't know, maybe have you done anything with Bayesian? Have you heard about Bayesian? Do you hate Bayes? Do you like it? I don't know. Big picture, I'm trying to gear you toward what's coming. Bayesian statistics is going to be, I think, much more popular in the few years to come rather than it is right now. And so I'm trying to get you. And everything that we do in the models can be done in Bayesian as well. We're going to talk about missing data, which Bayesian's involved in, and the models are involved in. Then we're talking about another paradigm, which is sort of what I call the contemporary version of what used to be called nonparametric statistics. You ever heard of nonparametric statistics? When I say that to you, what's the first word that comes to mind? Chi-square, there we go, that's a good one. I want to say Wilcoxon. Does that sound good? Yeah, ranks and stuff. No, modern versions of it are less that and more things like, well, you've got this predictor variable or set of predictors, but the relationship is not at all linear. Can you fit a kind of a spline or a curve to it that's not linear? Or may not even have a functional form to it. It's really hard to see. It's this wavy kind of pattern. So that's where that's going. The other part would be you make all these assumptions about the distributions of certain things in your model. What if your assumptions are off? What happens to, if you're in a frequentist point of view, what happens to your p-values? Right? So there's bootstrapping. Which, ever heard of bootstrapping before? Yeah, resampling your data, trying to have different ways to give you different statistics themselves. And then finally, we end with exploratory stuff. This April 24th class usually becomes why I hate both of those methods, but it happens. And clustering and latent class methods ends the class. I hate those usually too, but I was thinking about throwing in some more like machine learning or something that would be a little bit, how does this tie into other things that you may hear? Because there's, like everybody's now big about machine learning, but it's all the same stuff that we did before with just different marketing campaign. So that's why this class is different. That's why this experiment, so I've taught this class in this format now. This is probably my fourth or fifth time doing it. Fifth time doing this. So I've at least gotten enough feedback to try to make it better and better. So that's good. We'll see if the flip class makes it better for that. Let's see. Questions? Take a drink. Okay. Let's talk about what happens. I mentioned before, we really need two programs to download, R and RStudio. The links to those are on the website. If you haven't downloaded them yet and you have your computer here, please download them now. We're going to be working with them very soon. Why R? R is becoming one of the more popular, not just computer languages out there, it's also one of the more popular programming languages. And the reality of it is, for the majority of the stuff in the class, you won't be able to do it in the package like SPSS. It's just not capable of. SPSS is sort of languished, I feel like, since it went through kind of ownership change in the last few years. So, but increasingly, R is also something that, if you look at the metrics of who's using this language, it looks like it's, number one, going to be around for a long time because it's community-based. It's an open source, free language and code system. Number two, it's free, which in some respects is dangerous. There's not a lot of quality control in some package. But in many respects, it's actually very powerful because, you know, for instance, there have been errors made by M+, or SAS, or SPSS, or Stata. But you can't check them necessarily because you don't have the syntax for it, or the code behind it. So there are people in the world who can double check what's going on underneath the hood. I don't expect everybody to. In fact, a small little fraction of people can, but it's a community. It's something a community can improve itself. R is also great for replicable and reproducible research, which is a big deal these days as well. So part of that is because it's a script-based language. So we don't have a user interface. We write a text file. Now, we can still do that in SPSS. We can do that in SAS or Stata as well. But the other part of that, though, is because R is open. You can see every bit of the algorithm that goes into it if you wanted to. So it's transparent. So it helps for reproducibility in a large thing. One of the problems we had with M+, Lisa and I taught this class of M, a little bit of M+, back at Nebraska. And it was our first time putting M+ onto different processors, different computer systems. And we found the Linux numbers were different than the Microsoft numbers. And it's just like in the back-end programming-wise, I think I know where the problem lies. But I can't tell you because I can't pull out the code to see where that is. But how unnerving is that? If you want to talk about reproducible research or replicable research, the same data, the same script file, but you change your computer and the numbers change, that seems pretty dangerous. And so that doesn't mean that R is immune to those problems, but it does mean that if we need to figure out where the problem lies, we can find it, or someone can, potentially. So I think that's important. So that's why I teach in R. R is a pain. I started learning R in 2001, and it stunk then, and I didn't want to touch it for years and years and years. I still sort of got more into it a little bit here and there. You know, I could do stuff in it. But when I came back here, one of my colleagues, Billy Skorupski, teaches in R, so I thought now's a good time to kind of form a cohesive unit here and try to do R. So we're going to do R with everything. So I will tell you, and those of you who've tried R, it stinks, right? It sucks. No? Anybody like R? Does anybody hate R? It's okay. Because the people in R would love to take the hate and put a big capital R at the end. Hate R, hater. Right? It's all the, any like package in R has to have the capital R somewhere in it. I think it's like a rule. Hate R. It's still pretty frustrating, but I'm going to try to minimize the frustration as much as I can. So, long story short, part of that minimization is bring your laptop if you have one. If you don't, if you can try to get access to one, it'd be great. Try to interact with you. Rely on your peers, rely on Jihong, rely on myself. We're here to help, but R is going to be tough. All the materials I'm going to give you in class will be what you need to do the homework. We're going to get to homework in just a little bit. But everything that you see in the example files, there'll be nothing that you have to go look up and figure out yourself. I'm trying to make it as use R friendly as possible. Right? So, now I'm on a roll. Look out, dad jokes are coming. Right? So in that regard, if you find yourself on a homework assignment thinking, I got to look up this function. No, there's got to be an easier way. You know, what I actually like to say to you, I don't want you to spend 20 hours trying to figure out how to make regression run. What I'd like you to do is for your attempts at it, to try it enough to understand how to ask a good question, right? That doesn't need to be 20 hours. That could be 20 minutes. But then at that point, look up Jihong or look up me. Give us a ring. Give us a email. Figure us out. Get a hold of us, and we'll try to help you a little bit. Does that sound cool? So it's not to be one of those things where it's this big mystery, which I've been in classes where it's like that, and that's just, you're not learning anything then, right? It's very structured. Now, in that regard, I don't believe that you're going to be an R super user when you leave here, right? I'd like you to be able to run the models I showed you with some configurations, but I think a lot of those are going to work for your research as you go on, right? I'd like you to be able to get your data in and out of R and to get the numbers that you want. And if I can achieve that, I think I hope that gets what you need. If you want to be an R super user, I can point you in the direction of places that can give you more instruction than that. I'm not going to dive into the real nuts and bolts of R. I don't think it does us a lot of good right now. Okay. Questions? Okay, our homework system. With the exception of homework 1, we are going to do homework online. This is an example from the last class I taught. Let's do this. This is what it looks like. Each homework, with the exception of this first homework, will be something where, so you click this, hopefully it works. You have a data file, or you don't. There'll be a data file, there'll be some starter syntax in R to get the data into R, right? This is not a big mystery. We're going to try to solve as many R problems as we can. But then there'll be a series of questions. There's usually a vignette, something that's pretty terribly written, like this one is about miniature golf. And there'll be a series of questions that you need to answer using models that we taught. So how many times have you done homework in stats class and you got the model wrong, but you kept doing it because you didn't know, right? This is designed so that won't happen, because the first question, or usually the first sets of questions, if you don't answer them right, then you're in the wrong model altogether. The rest of them won't go. So how would you know if it's right or wrong? Let's say I said the mean square error was 7. It will highlight it. You put in the number, and you hit enter. The box turns red if it's wrong. It turns green if it's correct. So if you've got it right, you know immediately. If you got it wrong, double check your output, double check your syntax. There's something wrong in the model, and then you can continue with it moving forward. Each of your data sets will be generated randomly, so each of you has a different number that you'll put in. Also kind of cool, maybe. And at the end, Where that's cool is some of the homeworks will be like this, where there's essentially a bunch of questions sort of to get you to get the models right and to get the numbers right and to know where to look on the output. And then there's a bunch of text that goes along where this becomes effectively the results section of a journal. Right? So you could borrow, if you're writing your own journal article, you can borrow this format however you want. I mean, it's pretty formulaic. When it gets down middle of the text, we have these things that look like Mad Libs, where depending on the numbers in your data set, you have to pick the right option, and they're basically going to have you interpret your results, right? What does the interaction mean? What does a conditional main effect mean? This was significant, this was not significant, this was positive, this was negative. All the different ways that it can happen, at least some of them will be in here. So in principle, that's where we have it. What we're trying to do is multiply our ability to sort of look over your shoulder and help you with the model. But then these questions here, I don't give you a chance to check whether they're right or wrong, but you can talk about them, you can ask questions about them, we can work on those as well. And at the end, you can save your answers and submit them, and you can see your score, and it's all right there. So this is not yet operational, and the reason is it's been written in. This originated at Nebraska with one of the instructors up there, Cal Garbin, and was modified by one of his teaching assistants who got a master's while we were there. But it started around year 2000, and it's written in this old standard for web interface called Active Server Pages, and then Lisa took it and put it into SAS. And then I took it and put it into R. So it goes R to R, which is the modern thing, to old, right? And I don't mean that old is bad, but in this case, it's really clunky to work from my end. I'm trying to make it where it's less clunky, and so if I can succeed in that, by the first homework time it's due, it'll be a little bit better. But in practice, it's a little bit more clunky, as those of you who've taken this before, Ahmed, anybody else who's seen it, it can get a little, there are times it doesn't work out optimally, but I'm hoping to make that better. The other part that's funny is there's also it's written in this weird syntax where I can't read one line of text by itself, and so and it takes me like 15 minutes to go from syntax to the actual web page. So like the actual editing of it, there's typos, there's junk everywhere. You can see how bad I type. So that's homework. What we're planning on, what I'm going to do for the class, not planning, there will be a total of 8 homeworks, and there will be 1 extra credit homework. And then before each class or during each class, you'll have a quiz. So there's I grade on a 100-point scale, not percentage, just points. So the quizzes are worth 2 points each, and there'll be 15 quizzes. There's 15 more weeks left. So there's 30 points. The homeworks are 9 points each. That gives you 72. 8 times 9 should be 72. No, yep, that's it. Yep, thank you. So 30 plus 72, you already get 2 points of extra credit, potentially right there. And then throw on top of that a 5-point extra credit homework assignment. You have up to 107% you can get in class, right? So again, I'm trying to take away the fear that you have of your grade, because when you're sitting there and you're already struggling with R, if you're struggling with R, if you're like me, you would be, and you're trying to get the model right, and all you see is this damn red box, the thing you're going to be remembering is, I'm going to fail this class, right? You're not going to fail this class. You did just fine. It's just a matter of, so I've embedded 7 extra points of extra credit just to start with. There may even be other opportunities throughout the way. This is not a failure type class. It's mainly the way that I built that. And I feel like I have to say this because I feel so punitive when I see those red boxes. And I know a lot of the students, and most of you are going to try, probably all of you are going to try so hard to get it right, but it's so discouraging at points. It's not going to affect your grade. I just want you to get help. I want you to learn it. The point is learning. It's not about your grade. You're all graduate students. I said I'm in grad school. I'm still in school. We're all in school here. Grades really don't mean a whole lot unless you do really, really bad. And you're not There's no way you're going to, if you try, you're not going to do really, really bad. Am I right? Oh, you're laughing. Now, if you really want that A, no, I'm just kidding. Extra credit, there'll be opportunities for extra credit. No, I don't do that. Here's the grade point system. So this is total points. So you can get up to 107 total, but if you get a 93 or above, you get an A. I'm not trying to trip you up here. Okay. Okay, I think I've gotten everything on it. Questions? Yes?
As we're working on the homework, since it's online, I'm guessing it might take us a while to go through all the questions. Can we save and continue?
Yes, absolutely. The button at the bottom, in fact, every time you hit enter, it saves what you've put in already. So when you go back to it, it's where you had it. But there is a button at the end that says save. So yes, thank you. Now I will say, so this whole homework system is clunky. So this is not about saving, but it's more about just practice. So it's me, not in my basement at least, but still working on this. I'm tech support, right? And so sometimes things break, and sometimes they break around the time of the deadline. Last semester, Lisa in her class, during finals, she used the system too, in her finals, there's not a final she had, but she had a end homework assignment. And sure enough, the host that we have to do this kept crashing. And they'll never happen again. Well, we're paying $10 a month. It's not like, we're expecting it to be, Facebook style ready to go for everybody. So what I'm going to ask you is your patience with that. If that's up against a deadline and something like that happens, send me a note. Helps if I see a screenshot of what's going on if something clunky happens. And, I'm capable. I push deadlines. We can make things work. Things are flexible about that. But I will say, in general, what I'd like to do, I try to put a deadline on the homework to begin with, because if you turn in your homework late, I want to kind of keep you up to date on the class. The homework really fits with the material, and it helps you understand it better. And so if you do turn it in past the deadline, there's a penalty, I think, of 4 points. I'll have it in here somewhere. So it automatically takes 4 points off of the homework after the deadline. But if there's a mass problem, like the website goes down, or who knows what happens, I'll move the deadline. But in general, that's it. The other thing I'll mention is if you have a planned absence, if you've got, conference coming up or whatever else, let me know and I can move your deadline also, right? But being planful helps. I know there are those times where, like today, didn't expect for the schools to be closed, right? So got issues. Happens. We can fix that too. It certainly helps the planning ones, but I'm more than willing to be flexible about everything else. I just would like to try to get you to it as quick as we can, because it'll help you understand what we're talking about. The class is structured in a way to be incremental, so that as you solidify understanding, it'll help you learn better as you go along as well. Okay, what else am I doing here? Questions? Have I scared you off yet? Good. I don't want to scare anybody. Take some work. Okay, so what you'll see on the website, if you're looking for additional help in R, there's a set of references. If you have any other references you'd like to see listed up there, just send them to me. I can add them. I like this one. ARG, an angry newcomer's angry guide to R. That one sounds pretty good. When you get to this section of the course schedule, this is supposed to be a little, on the left you can click the day. You'll see I'm only prepped up till next week, barely. So that's how it's going to be for a lot of it. What you'll see are a list of topics. So when you come today, there was no videos you needed to watch, no quizzes you needed to take, none of that before class. Our in-class materials, we had our course syllabus. We'll have our working example that we'll have for each class. After the class is done, the videos that I have on YouTube, I'll put links to here, but you can always find them on my YouTube channel. See, I never really subscribe to people on YouTube that much. I just use the search. And after seeing my daughter's channels are the things that she subscribed to. Kind of putting myself in what she was watching and thinking, no. Anyway, and our active homework assignment is here. It'll be due, we have a homework that's going to be due January 29th, but it's going to be an R homework. It's not online. This is the one homework that's not going to be online. But I have a way you can check your homework, by the way. I'll show you that in just a little bit. And there'll be additional links here. So next week, if you're preparing for next week, you click on that week's class, and you'll already see, thankfully this morning I recorded 2 videos. So your homework this week is to watch those 2 videos. And there is a quiz in Blackboard, which I'll show you in just a moment. I have a bunch of readings. I have a OneDrive link I'm going to share with you. It's actually in the Blackboard site. I just put it there. I haven't put all of them in the folder yet. I'm going to slowly put them in as we go because I might be changing some of them. You don't have to read the readings. Nothing in the material, nothing in the quiz, nothing in the homework is going to be in the reading. And I'm saying that to you because before we had this huge reading list, and it turned out I know how it works. Yeah, I'm going to read all that, right? And there were several people who did, but it's hard to read all the readings. So I'm going to focus on the videos. And if you don't believe me, if you don't take my word for it, there's a reading, or it's another source, another reference you can go back to. So I'm hoping that goes a little bit better, but it's not absolutely required. I guess there may be a thing or two I say, hey, look at this, but it's not going to be this big. You know, super large, super long. The files that I use for each of the videos will be up here as well. And let's see here. Let's go to the Blackboard site. So I will admit something. This is my first time using Blackboard for real, or trying to use it for real, so I'm pretty terrible at it. So if I tell you, I think this is on Blackboard. I try to get the student view so I can see it as well, but I'm not entirely sure I am getting things right. So if you don't see things on Blackboard, let me know. On Blackboard, what you should be able to see, though, if I go to the student view, is an announcement of where the readings can be found. This folder link right here should give you access to our folder of our course readings. This is a chapter in Lisa's book. Again, it's not required reading, it's supplemental. It's, you know, if you're really interested, absolutely read it. But I think we can get by with the lectures and practice it. It's already going to take a lot of time with that anyway. And then the other thing I want to point you to is that if you have questions and answers while you're watching the videos, go here under Activities. I have a forum where you can go and should be able to, actually under Conversations, there's a forum, maybe not. I need to make it where you can actually go and do this, but you can go and answer your questions in the forum, or ask questions in the forum. And you can do so anonymously. It's one of the things I remember in class, and particularly in this class this size, is nobody wants to ask a question because you're afraid that everybody knows the answer but you. But from the perspective of the instructor, if you have the question, it's highly correlated with a lot of other of your peers having the question as well, right? So I want to make it as easy as possible as you can to send me questions. And again, what I will do when we come to our question and answer part, when we start our next class, I'm going to go right there. If there are no questions and nothing to ask, I will say, any questions? You got to do it in front of class. But if not, then we'll move on to the R example. And I'm doing this because I've heard feedback from other instructors about their first time of the flipped class, and they're like, I sort of just repeated the lecture over and over again. I don't want to do that. So I'm trying to find an efficient way to do this. Have you used the forum capability in Blackboard? Is it, anybody? I see some nods, yes? I don't know how it works. I've tried, I'm trying for the anonymous thing. So I looked up a couple apps that were out there, and none of them made me feel comfortable because you'd have to sign up. And I don't want you signing up for whatever else that you already have. You know, you don't need to do that. So Blackboard's where we're going to try, but if it doesn't work as well the first week, we'll get it fixed and try to make it work. So does that sound cool? So your responsibility when you're watching these videos, even if it's the most mundane question, put it in there. Put it in as anonymous. I don't care, right? Why did you use that style of, I don't even know, theme for your PowerPoint slides? I don't care. Just no question is too simple. There are, and it's important that you ask it because most likely if you have the question, then other people will, or other people may have not even thought of that question, but they will have come to that at some point as well. So please do. And then finally, should be able to see it, although I can't see it now, but what you should see coming up soon is that there will be a quiz on here. It is a 2-item quiz. There's 2 questions. They're multiple choice. So I ask that you, the quiz itself ends, it ends access at 12 p.m. on the day of our class on Tuesdays. So answer those 2 questions after you watch the videos. If you get them wrong, there's a chance to make it up. But I ask that you try the quiz to get a chance to make it up, if that makes sense. If you come in and you haven't tried it yet, I get it. You're behind, whatever. But I just want to keep us on board with it. So we'll talk. So you answer the questions. I'll tell you the answers in class. You'll see the answers. You can fix it. I don't care. Or you can talk about the answers. But find a way to make it work where you pretty much know the answers after class. And the questions aren't going to be on slide 3, lower left. It'll be more bigger picture questions that are out there. So, okay. I'm going to stop here for the moment, and we're going to take a break for 10 minutes. So let's pause, have 10 minutes. We'll go, and then we'll come back around 1:30. If you are someone who needs access to Blackboard or other parts of the class, please come up here, and I will talk to you individually.